these large species move on the landscape and create diverse niches and habitats? Are we allowing them to do that? And if not, can we help mimic that? Ideally we want them to be doing it. That's always going to be the best. They're the experts.
Hello, folks. Welcome to Learning Lab. This is Ma Earth's online community where we share tools, skills, and stories in service of planetary health and regeneration. I'm Sophia Rocklin. I'm our facilitator and our host. And today we are having our 10th Learning Lab featuring Kate Lundquist of the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. Based out of California, they have an organization called the Water Institute where they're working with communities, government, and other sort of social structures to help and support the revival of degraded waterways. And I met Kate a couple of years ago in person, along with a group of different ecological practitioners, and I was really blown away by her work with beaver. Her and her colleagues have been stewarding the beaver coexistence help desk, working together using and exalting the natural wisdom of beaver. Beaver are a keystone species in California, but also all across the Northern Hemisphere. And more broadly, I thought that this would be a really interesting topic to invite into this kind of growing library and community of regeneration to really bring in and call in our more than human kin and animal friends. So how can the work of beaver actually guide and inspire working with different keystone species all around the world with the work that we do in regeneration? So I feel very excited to have Kate join us today, and stick around for the end of the session where live people who join from around the world for these sessions participate in a Q&A. If you would like to join us live next time, you can subscribe to our calendar in a link. It's a Luma link on today's show notes. So before we dive in, I would love to read a piece to kind of exalt and celebrate the magic of poetry and story in connecting us with our more than human or kind of animal community. So I came upon this piece by Joanna Macy, who is our recent and well ancestor, and I thought I would read it. So to kind of settle us into this space. We hear you, fellow creatures. We know we are wrecking the world, and we are afraid. What we have unleashed has such momentum now, we don't know how to turn it around. Don't leave us alone. We need your help. You need us too for your own survival. Are there powers there that you can share with us? I liken work slowly, very slowly. Time is my friend. This is what I give you. Patience for the long haul and perseverance. It is a dark time. As deep diving trout, I offer you my fearlessness of the dark. I, lion, give you my roar, the voice to speak out and be heard. I am caterpillar. The leaves I eat taste bitter now, but dimly I sense a great change is coming. What I offer you humans is my willingness to dissolve and transform. I do that without knowing what the end result will be, so I share with you my courage too. So, without further ado, Kate, thank you so much for joining us for today's session, and I'll let you take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and greetings to all. It's an honor to be here, and I want to just, thank you for taking time out of your day to be able to come and listen to what I've been doing over the last couple decades. And And the work that I've gotten to do, working with, in this case, beavers, which is an amazing, it's an amazing privilege to get to work with beavers. So, as Sophia said, I am Kate Lundquist, and I co-direct the Water Institute at the Occidental Arts Ecology Center. And I'm zooming in from Western Sonoma County, California, which is the unceded territory of the Coast Miwok and Southern Pomo. And we have the great privilege of having this 80-acre site that is both a demonstration site, a learning lab itself, a retreat center where we gather and host change makers to really carry this movement forward. And we are blessed to be able to have done this now for 31 years. Our nonprofit has been in existence. So that's been an amazing journey. And I met the nonprofit at the beginning of the journey and started working with them. And actually in 1998, doing some ecological design work. And through that really formed a great relationship with the incredible group of ecologists and activists and social change makers that are part of this center. And went on staff 20 years ago. So this has been a long time project for me. And this is my Water Institute staff, which, we are one of many programs at OAC. We have a resilient community design program. We have a mother garden, and we have our wildlands program. And we do a lot of work both on site, demonstrating how to regenerate cultural and biological diversity, and then also out in the community, the region, and the world. And so it's truly been an honor and a privilege to develop these relationships with so many different entities out there in the world, from communities, individuals, tribal entities, agencies we work with a lot, and really just working on this project together and forming these collaborations as the humans so that we can help all the non-humans and our watersheds. And I do want to call out my co-director, Brock Dolman. So when I say we, I'm often referring to both he and I, because we've been doing this work for the last 20 years together. And so at the Water Institute, our goal ultimately is to increase holistic watershed restoration and species recovery literacy and implementation. And we do that through various means. We really try to be strategic about how we spend our precious time. And so a lot of outreach and education has been super key in our work, and then demonstrating these different techniques and making sure that folks, understand what the results can be, and that we too have dirt under our nails. We're not just talking heads. We're actually out there doing it as well, so that we're learning from our own experience and the experience of others. And then really trying to support our communities, our partners, in building their capacity to increase their own literacy and do this work on their own has been a big part of what we do. And then ultimately, if the rules are stopping us from doing what we want to do, we got to change the rules. So policy change is a really important part of the work that we do. And I do want to make a special call out to the artwork of my dear friend Suzanne Husky, who is a French-American artist and change maker herself and beaver advocate. And she has come out with a book with Baptiste Morisseau this year, and about the relationship between humans and rivers and beaver in particular. And so a lot of the artwork you'll see in my presentation are Suzanne's that I have used with permission, and just want to uplift her and her beautiful work. So when we think about watersheds, we think of them as a basin of relations, and we all live in watersheds throughout the world, wherever we are, and we all have different relations, potential relations within that watershed. And so those basins of relations are really relying on us to collaborate to conserve not just the really important creeks and lakes and water bodies, but the entire watershed from the ridgeline to the river to the reef is what we like to emphasize. And, as Sophia already mentioned, I'm going to be talking about my journey with beaver today, and that's just one focal species on Earth. There are so many species out there that are playing critical roles that we can be partnering with, and so I'm going to invite you, as I'm talking, to think about your own watershed and who those species are that figure prominently, and that you can partner with your community to really uplift and do this work together and do it better, faster, and with more pleasure. It's really a fun journey to get to work with different species. So here we are. We're talking about the North American beaver in my case. There are actually two species of beaver on Earth: the North American beaver, Castor canadensis, and then also the Eurasian beaver, Castor fiber. And they're only endemic, native to the Northern Hemisphere. And some may have heard of the beaver down in Tierra del Fuego. They were brought there as a fur farm project and have now run amok. And those ecosystems did not co-evolve with beaver, and so those tree species do not coppice as well as those that occur in beaver territory. And so it's kind of become an issue. And this is what happens when the humans get creative and start moving a bunch of species around Earth. And so beaver in North America and in Europe and Asia were nearly trapped to extinction. In Europe and Asia, it happened earlier, 1200s, 1300s, 1400s, and then it happened later once the settler colonialists were coming to North America for our beaver here. And it was all driven by the rapacious hunger for resource extraction. And beaver were the resource of the day. The fur rush was very significant because beaver furs provided excellent hair to create felt. So all hats were made of felt in the era. Coats, many different things were made with beaver furs. And then their castoreum glands as well were used to make medicine and perfumes, and still to this day are used to make perfumes. And so this is what financed exploration and the colonial agenda. And it took a huge impact. And so for us in North America, we had anywhere from 60 to 400 million beaver that were managing 10 to 20% of our waterways. And this is why you hear accounts of like those trying to cross North America. It was wetland after wetland that they were getting hung up in. And a lot of that was managed by beaver. And thankfully, in a lot of areas, there's been an active effort to reestablish beaver. And so for us here in North America, and in particular California, we had a program from the 1930s until 1950 that moved over 1,200 beaver across the state to reestablish them. And I put in this little image of the parachuting beaver because, in fact, that did happen. This was a big creative push towards the end of this effort after World War II to get beavers into remote areas. And it's worth looking up online the old historic videos, the black and white film of the beaver parachuting out of airplanes. They were in boxes, and that would open on impact, but fascinating human ingenuity that actually worked. It's not what we're doing these days, however, but fun little fact there. And I want to mention that the fur rush had a massive impact, but when we're thinking about our landscapes, it's really important, and thinking about what we're dealing with and where we need to go, to think of all the legacy impacts that have happened. For us here in North America and California in particular, major presence of indigenous California tribes that were managing the landscape for time immemorial. And then with settlers, massive genocide, which removed those caregivers, care tenders, land tenders from the landscape and had a huge impact. And then the fur rush happened, adding more insult to injury. And then the gold rush, and then unmanaged grazing, and then clear cutting of wood and all of the removal of wood from our rivers and streams. And And then this huge era of road building and fire suppression and big dam building that has brought us where we are today, in a situation where most of our waterways are compromised, and we're experiencing, exacerbated by climate change, massive megafires here in the state. And there are similar trajectories on different landscapes across the globe that are really important to acknowledge and to help us think about how to repair these landscapes that we're working in. And so I just want to tell you some fun things about beaver and what they actually, what their life history is, and what impacts they are having on the landscape. And so they are a mammal, a rodent actually, second largest rodent on Earth, second to the capybara, and the largest in North America. And they, unlike most rodents, they only have one litter of kits a year, and they keep their kits around for 2 to 3 years. And they work as a family group, anywhere from 6 to 10 individuals in a colony of beaver. And they have a lot of specialized adaptations they're semi-aquatic, but they spend a lot of time in the water. And so they have these webbed hind feet for swimming. They have split toes for combing oil through their fur to keep it well groomed and waterproof. And then they have these really important incisors, these front teeth that are self-sharpening. They sharpen when chewing hard objects, and they grow up to 4 feet a year. So they have to constantly be chewing to keep them sharp. But this is what they use to harvest their foods and building materials. They are herbivores. And so they rely a lot on vegetation to keep their on average 60 to 80 pound body alive. So they're incredible habitat generalists and really adaptable. They basically live where there is water and vegetation that they can live off of. And so in North America, they go all the way down to the Sonoran Desert in Mexico, and now they have reached the Arctic Circle with the tundra thawing. They are taking advantage of the new growth of plants and flowing water in that region, and they can go as up to tree line in mountainous regions. And they're really adaptable enough that they can actually live in cities, and often do. And so it's not uncommon to see them in urban environments. And their thing is that because they're not as agile on land, they need deep water to keep them safe from predators. And so they're going to take advantage of existing water bodies like the lake that you see featured on the right here, and build a freestanding lodge just out into the water that has underwater entrances. They spend a lot of time sleeping, grooming. If it's a wintry, snowy area, then they're going to actually spend a lot of the winter in there. In other cases, if they're on a flowing water body, a river, a creek, if it's not deep enough already, and if the flow isn't too fast, they're going to build a channel spanning dam so that they can inundate the waterway, so their bank burrow entrance is also underwater. And these dams that they build, eventually they'll build several dams. They have a primary dam, a secondary, a tertiary, and create these incredible wetlands, or beaver complexes, they're often called. And these complexes end up trapping all kinds of things that are in the water. So nutrients, suspended contaminants, pollutants, all kinds of suspended solids that might be going through the water column get trapped in these beaver dams. And so they're doing a great service there in helping improving water quality. And for us, one of our most iconic lakes in California, Lake Tahoe, is, the water quality is really decreasing. And there is a massive beaver wetland complex featured in this photo here that has been proven to be really trapping a bunch of sediments and helping keep Tahoe blue. So we're grateful for the beaver for their services there. And in addition, these complexes really help to buffer climate extremes. So in flooded situations, when you have these series of dams, they can act as speed bumps and really slow down the water and take the energy out of it, shunt it out onto the floodplain. And then similarly, hold that water longer into dry seasons. And so for those of us that suffer droughts and where beaver are present, they can help us make us more resilient to those droughts. And then these wetlands also don't burn during wildfires. And so they become really important refugia during the fire and after the fire. And there's some great work done by Emily Fairfax and Dr. Whittle. And they have a paper called Smokey the Beaver, and really looking at landscape scale fires and seeing that where the beaver are is where these critical green oases are still persisting and allowing these species to survive after fires. And in places where there has been a lot of working landscapes, particularly ranching, for example, it's not hard to overgraze and have these systems get really downcut and degraded. And so in the upper left photo, this is Susie Creek in Carlin, Nevada, and near the town of Elko. And this area had been really grazed for decades, if not a century. And it had gotten really downcut and denuded of the vegetation. And so working with the Bureau of Land Management and one of our conservation organizations, Trout Unlimited, the ranchers agreed to take the cattle off just during the hot season to see what would happen. And sure enough, the vegetation was able to recover enough that beaver were able to return on their own. And once they were there, they started managing the waterways and coppicing the vegetation. And in this collaborative effort with the ranchers, they were able to restore this once denuded waterway into a much more vibrant and diverse wetland that now the ranchers say they wouldn't have a ranching operation if it weren't for the beavers. So kudos to the beaver for supporting that as well. And Sophia already mentioned that beaver are a keystone species, and that metaphor, if you aren't familiar with it, comes from architecture. When you're building a stone arch, putting in the stones bit by bit, the final stone that you put in at the top is the keystone, and that's what ultimately holds the curve of the arch together. And if you remove that, the arch falls apart. And so similarly, we have many keystone species on Earth that play critical roles. And basically, it's the activities that they're doing to tend to themselves and their kin and their kits, their children, that is disproportionately benefiting a bunch of other species. And so for us here in California, we have a bunch of endemic species. We have a lot of rare species that only exist here in California, and a lot of them are threatened or endangered. And it just so turns out that the beaver wetlands are really helping to provide habitat, whether it's our willow flycatcher or a coho salmon or cascade frogs or sage grouse. Those are all really benefiting from beaver. And I love this, that we can, in working with one species, we get to work with all of these other species, and we get to support all of these other species. And so it really helps accelerate these recovery processes that we're working on. And that's definitely one of the ways we really try to think about, coho salmon are another example of the marine nutrient pump, where they are bringing in nutrients from the ocean to all of the waterways that are on the West Coast, and basically providing really critical nutrients to our forests. And so identifying where we can really double up and get more bang for our buck has been really helpful to accelerate the restoration process. And another thing beaver do, even if they're not building dams, they are building lodges, and these bank lodges, it turns out. So this is a study that happened up in one of our undammed and still wild rivers in California, the Smith River, and looking at what role do these bank lodges and the stick piles that the beaver push out. So they love to eat the cambium layer of a willow in particular, is one of their favorite things. And so they'll chew it and then they'll push the stick out of the lodge. And so this photo on top here is what that looks like outside of their burrow entrance. And it turns out that these are functioning as river reefs. They are providing really important habitat for all kinds of native species of fish and amphibians. And this is like a whole other extra added bonus that people aren't even tracking. A lot of folks are still not even aware of this yet, as far as the beaver story goes. And so it's a really great reminder that we think we know everything and we don't, and we need to keep our minds open and keep exploring and really pay attention. And so we're really interested in more work being done to explore the role that these beaver bank lodges are playing in their stick piles in rivers where dams aren't happening. The dams are pretty fun, and there's a lot more to it. So since there has been such a what we call a beaver blind spot, particularly in California, which prides itself in being a state that is very innovative and on the cutting edge of a lot of efforts. When it came to beaver, it turns out that California was a bit behind. And so for the last, 20 years, we've been talking about beaver and coming up against resistance, a lot of misperceptions in California, that they're not native to California. There were some old reports that talked about this that were written a long time ago, back when there wasn't a lot of understanding or evidence. And similarly, people thought that beaver were bad for fish and that they were going to prevent them from moving up and downstream. And so we decided we really needed to push back and actually launch a whole campaign and focus much more of our energy on this question and really providing answers to these concerns. Because as it turns out, there's been a lot of work done to indicate that beaver are good for fish, and fish have proven, to be capable to go over dams or move when the flows are high or wriggle through dams. And we found a bunch of evidence that indicates that beaver are, in fact, native to most of California. So we launched the Bring Back the Beaver campaign officially in 2012, though we had been doing the work for many years already, to really raise folks' awareness about what's happening in the beaver space and how we could better partner with beavers. Because in California, we actually kill a lot of beaver due to conflict. So a big part of that has been doing a lot of outreach and education and really working with communities, showing up at events, doing strategic conferences, meetings with agencies, really trying to be strategic about who really needs this information, who do we need to get to say yes to our goal of creating a culture of stewardship for beaver in California so that we can move forward with that. So I don't even know how many presentations we've done in the last 15 years. It's been many, 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 and it's always a joy, and there's still a need. So here we are. And then, like I said before, demonstrating and capacity building. So we work a lot with networks to do trainings. Our California Process-Based Restoration Network is one of those. And we are invited by a lot of different entities to come and support their capacity building, our tribal partners in particular with the Yurok and the Maidu Summit Consortium and Tule River. It's been a great honor to work with them to help them learn about beaver and figure out ways to bring them back onto their lands that they steward. And then ultimately with the policy change, we've been very, strongly advocating for policy change for many years, and eventually realized that it was going to be helpful to hire a lobbyist who focuses solely on beaver with us. And that has been a real game changer and incredibly helpful to have someone in the state capitol working for us and beaver. And we've been able to affect a lot of change, which I will talk more about in a bit. So this is our lobbyist, Jennifer Fearing. She's awesome. And it's been a lot of different groups that we've been able to bring together to come to the table to talk about beaver, because when you have an organism that can help you keep water on the landscape longer into the dry season, especially for us in California, where we're super reliant on a persistent snowpack that is going away. Rising snow level is real with climate change. And right now we have very little snow in the Sierra, and we are well into our winter. And so it's not hard to convince anyone that uses water that to work with a species that can help us keep that water on the landscape longer and cleaner is a good idea. So thankfully, we have the scientific community really doing a lot of great work to support this beaver and process-based restoration movement. And process-based restoration is a bigger umbrella approach where we're working with nature's processes, with the power and energy of our river systems, and especially in places where there is space to reclaim our riverscapes, and taking advantage of the on-site materials and really working over time to restore ecological function to our watersheds. And this has been a movement that builds on many different traditions that are already, out there and existing. And this has been a really wonderful kind of new framing, particularly in the low-tech process-based restoration space, where we're really empowering folks to work in areas where it's not appropriate to work with larger machinery, and to do handwork and to build meaningful workforces, meaningful jobs for workforces, and to really affect a great deal of change without a lot of money needed. And it's a lot more accessible. And so beaver are part of the process-based restoration. They are the experts. That's who we're learning from. They've been doing this for 8 million years. We're a little late to the party, but we're catching up. And so here we are. If you're interested in getting nerdy about either of these two resources are going deep about the theory and practice of both beaver and process-based restoration. And in California, we've been really encouraging our scientific community to also put more focus on the impacts of beaver on biodiversity and carbon sequestration in particular. And we've had some success and great results up in our mountain meadows. In particular, some studies happening in a place called Child's Meadow, which is near Lassen Peak, which is our southernmost peak in the Cascade Range. And this work was focusing on our really endangered willow flycatcher, and noticed that there was a 1-to-1 correlation. The more beaver dams and beaver inundation we had, the more breeding territories that the willow flycatcher create. They need protection from rodents getting up into the willow that eat their eggs and their nestlings. So super important to be able to know this and to have this evidence so that we can really leverage that and get more of our folks on board when managing beaver, and making sure that we're not needlessly killing beaver in places where we have willow flycatcher. And similarly, carbon sequestration is a big bonus. Beavers, when they're inundating and saturating soils and vegetation, that helps keep the carbon in the ground. And then they are also tending and growing plants. They are farmers in essence, and that as well is sequestering more carbon. And so one of our strategies has really been to work with pre-existing restoration communities to support them in achieving, working with beaver to achieve their conservation goals. And it's been amazing. Our work with the Salmonid community has been super huge and successful. There's a lot of folks there who are now actively engaging. This was again a 20-year effort of being the ones in the room who got laughed at because we were talking about beaver, to now we are all working together towards, okay, how can we get more beaver on the landscape? So that's been really gratifying. And similarly for us, again, this ridge line to river to reef, starting up in our headwaters and looking at those that are doing mountain meadow restoration, which is, there's a big effort here in California and across the arid West to be doing that. And so that, and really enlisting our agricultural community as well. We do have ecological agriculturalists in the state of California and elsewhere, and folks are doing, rangeland conservation that are interested in leveraging this work to work with other species and improve their soils and support the species that they are tending themselves. And so this is a photo of one of our Build Like a Beaver trainings that the California Process-Based Restoration Network does every year to increase restoration capacity. We are a group of restorationists, regulators, nonprofits, agency personnel who come together to really try to uplift and better understand this work and really support people's understanding of how to do it and to do it well, so that we can increase its efficacy and application, because there's still a huge reliance on really highly engineered projects that aren't always necessary in certain contexts. And so we're definitely becoming more part of that conversation. And it's been an amazing process. If you're interested, we have public meetings periodically, and you should definitely sign up to get on the mailing list for the Cal PBR network. And we have some folks that are from out of state. We're obviously California focused, but we rely a lot on other folks' work throughout the arid West. And there's a huge international community of beaver and process-based restoration folks doing this work as well. Speaking of, we've had a great honor to work outside of the U.S. with folks that are interested in doing this work. In the beaver space in particular, my partner, Kevin Swift, who runs the restoration company Swiftwater Design, he and I have been going to France for the last 3 years. And 2 years, we'll be going again for the third time this coming year. And working with folks that are really interested in integrating beaver and process-based restoration into their riverscapes and uplandscapes. And so this, again, is by the invitation of Suzanne Husky. This is the cover of her book that she did with Baptiste Morisseau. And they have an organization, the Movement of the Alliance of the Beaver People. And it's been really successful in really doing incredible advocacy to bring together different agencies, landowners, and NGOs that are doing restoration work to learn about this work together, to do demonstrations, and to really start implementing it. So super exciting. And there, like I said, there's a whole international community of folks doing this work. So check it out if this is something that interests you. So for us, we're really interested in doing a holistic approach to beaver restoration. We want to make sure that we don't just jump to the most exciting and fun thing, which is relocation, which everyone wants to do. I understand. I've done it. It's fun. It's amazing. It's really a privilege to be able to be that close to a beaver. And meanwhile, we have all of these other intermediary steps that we really want to make sure that we're taking into consideration. And so we always want to start with coexistence. And this is true of any species that we're working with. If there are conflicts arising, and as humans take over more ecosystems, we're running into conflicts left and right. And so for us, we are still, like I said, in California, killing anywhere from, we're killing hundreds of beavers every year due to conflict. And so we're really working to stop that from happening and providing resources. There's many ways that we can coexist. We can wrap our vegetation. We can put fencing around our culverts to keep the beaver from blocking them. We can put pipes through beaver dams in a way that's specialized that they can't sense the flow and they stop building to prevent flooding. And we can also protect our concrete weirs that beavers love to gum up in our Central Valley. And so lots of different strategies. And then in places where we're wanting to accelerate and increase the resiliency and duration of the beaver complexes. In California, we are actually reinforcing beaver dams to make them last longer. It's okay that they'll eventually blow out, but a lot of our beaver dams just blow out in one season. And so being able to make them persist a little bit longer frees them up to work on other parts of the complex. And here's a great example that we have in our foothills, about 45 minutes from our state capital. And it's a place where the landowner, the Placer Land Trust, had been trying to restore. And in the upper left, you'll see what it looked like before. It was just a single threaded channel. And the beaver were there, but they were eating all the restoration plantings. And so the the land trust was trapping the beaver because they were really, feeling like it was at cross purposes with what they were doing. And thankfully, they started working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who said, hey, we'll fund you to do restoration, but how about we sign a peace treaty with the beaver and let's go the other direction, reinforce, expand, take down levees, give the beaver more space. And they had the space to do that. And so within a 5-year period, the beaver, with some small human assistance at the tune of $75,000, which was mostly for the backhoe operator to dig out the levee in sections, the beaver were able to increase the wetland by 1,200%. And this is now a biodiversity hotspot. It's like class 5 beaver wetland. You can barely walk across it. It's up to your neck. So really incredible example of what beaver can do with, if given space. And similarly, in places where beaver, we want to prepare a site to bring beaver back to, or they're unsuitable for beaver, period, we can mimic what they do. And this is a lot of what we're doing in the process-based restoration space. So, and ultimately, yes, relocating them is a great technique if we have suitable habitat, for them to show up at. And so this is an important tool. And so I do want to say, however, that said, beavers can't be everywhere, nor should they be. We want to honor that and do what we can to support them where they are. And so thankfully, after all of this work that we've been doing, we've had some big wins in California, and this has been a real collaborative effort with a lot of different folks. Our state is finally recognizing beavers' conservation value. And so the governor passed a budget that created a beaver restoration program run by our California Department of Fish and Wildlife, also CDFW is what we call it. And they're going to be creating a beaver management plan. CDFW in 2023 created a beaver depredation policy, which was in response to a petition that we filed with our partners at the Center for Biological Diversity and the Environmental Protection Information Center. And that was basically just to allow the department to condition permits so that the landowners are required to try coexistence first. So this is huge. And then we also, because we really wanted to make sure that this program persisted beyond the next governor's administration, we were able to pass unanimously our beaver bill, which basically puts the program into code, and it will persist. So that's super huge. And finally, we did get some historic beaver translocations after nearly 75 years. The department was willing to start doing relocations again with this new program. And we were greatly honored that they chose our two partners, the Tule River Tribe and the Mighty Summit Consortium, to do these first pilot translocations with. And that's a huge moment for them to get beaver back. And we're really grateful that the department was willing to honor the hard work that we had been putting in for the previous 10 years to make those areas beaver ready. And then we did last year get awarded a $2 million grant to create a California Beaver Coexistence Training and Support Program. And so we are working on a conflict assessment report. We're training up coexistence contractors in collaboration with the Beaver Institute and their Beaver Core program so that we have more folks on the ground in California who know how to do coexistence. We're providing technical and financial assistance through our Beaver Help Desk and to carry these efforts out. And then ultimately we'll finalize it with a Beaver Conflict Response Plan, which will give recommendations on how to improve our system of responding to beaver conflict. So this is what our help desk looks like. And definitely, if you're in California, we would really appreciate you promoting this. We have some money to give away, and this money goes away in March of 2027. So really want to support landowners in getting access to the resources available through this program. And if you are in a space where you have beaver or they are nearby, it's really helpful to create or support existing community groups to steward local beaver colonies. It really helps having more eyes on the ground of what's happening, and just help with the education and outreach and the stewardship of those beavers. So these are four organizations in California that have done amazing work to steward the beaver in their midst. And then really helping keep track of where beaver are. We use iNaturalist. It's available globally, and you'll see if you look at iNaturalist, you can find a lot of beaver observation data on that site for both Castor canadensis and castor fiber. And it's a great way to figure out where beaver are in the first place, and then also contribute those data to this database, because a lot of folks use this. And then if you really want to geek out, you can gather with restoration professionals. There's a lot of stuff going on where people are talking about beaver. BeaverCon is one of our bigger conferences that moves locations in the US every year. And in 2026, it's going to be in Minneapolis. There's going to be a beaver parade. Minneapolis is really into parades, pretty fun. And then Beavers Across Britain is happening in Newcastle and in the UK. And yeah, it's just really helpful to continue to get the word out. And there's many resources out there. I just want to call out these. We have a booklet about our journey in stewarding beaver in California. We're currently updating it to include all of these new wins with the state, our state wildlife department. And if you haven't read Eager by Ben Goldfarb, it's a really entertaining read, and it also it covers the paleohistoric beavers and then all of the different things that happen to beaver across the entire globe. And so it's a really comprehensive story and really fun to read. And it's also a great audiobook if you prefer to listen to books. So, and then I do want to shout out our Beaver Institute as well, because they are a really great national partner who try to help connect folks from different states with resources. And they provide a lot of, they have a national help desk, and they're just a great ally and resource for those of us that are living and working in the United States. And finally, I'll just say, we too are a keystone species. I think, sometimes we forget that, and we have a choice. As my co-director Brock likes to say, we can be degenerative disturbers or we can be regenerative disturbers. And so I certainly aim for the latter, and I imagine if you're on this call, you do too. And so let's continue together to figure out how to do this in a good way to benefit as many species and processes as we can. And with that, I'll say thank you. These are some websites you can check out if Sophia hasn't already put those in the chat. And thank you so much. I think we're going to move on to our Q&A.
Hooray! Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, well, I have approximately 1 billion questions for you, Kate, but I do want to open the floor to our community here. So folks, if you have any questions, now is a great time to have them trickle into the chat. So I will take moderator's privilege, Kate. And I guess I'm just curious. Geez, where do I begin? I would love to know how this project was started. It's so apparently niche, I couldn't necessarily dream of it, but then it's so evident and apparent once you're in that space. So I would love to hear if you could share just a little bit about the inception, and also just in service to, maybe other land stewards around the world who are wondering how they can engage with species and kind of cohabitation with other beings in their biomes.
Sure. Yeah. So for us, it was really the coho salmon that led us to beaver, in part because in California, in particular, where we are with the Central Coast coho, they are having a precipitous decline and have been for many, many years. And it was and it still is, an all hands on deck effort. And folks were just pulling their hair out of what about this and what about that? And meanwhile, there was all of this incredible work happening in Oregon and Washington, indicating that beaver are really beneficial to coho salmon, and that there were all these studies of, remarkable recovery when you allow beavers to do their beaver thing in coho habitat. And so that's where it was like, oh, this is, having grown up seeing beaver wetlands and complexes, and I know Brock, who is an endangered, species biologist, he was well aware already of the potential benefits and had been pushing it kind of as his own side agenda. But then in these spaces that we were working with, it was just, like I said, folks just weren't talking about it. And so it was like, well, we got to start talking about this, and we got to get loud about this, and we got to identify what the information gaps are. And really the biggest obstacle was that folks were thinking they weren't native. And so that's when we're like, well, that's our homework assignment right now. And so, we have a whole process of power mapping that we do when we're launching any initiative. And so in this case, our goal was to make sure that beavers' conservation value was recognized and that they were being more greatly accepted and utilized in these restoration efforts, whether it was with coho salmon or rangeland riparians or up in mountain meadows. And so what are the things that are keeping us from achieving that goal, and who are the people that we needed to get to help us achieve that, to make a decision to help us achieve that. And early on, it was the historic ecology piece. And so we dove headlong in for a couple of years and published 3 peer-reviewed papers, 2 that we were part of, and 1 that was our co-author's paper, and that really helped move the dial. And so I think that's, for all of us, wherever we are, it's always a question of, do we have places where we already know that these species are benefiting other species, that we could then, would it make sense to adopt that approach where we currently are? And so bringing that wisdom and that knowledge, and, or are there analogous species? It's like, what function are these species playing? Can we create analogs? And so in the case of beaver, they're creating complexity in the rivers, and they are holding water back. They are creating wetlands. And so, sure, we can create them ourselves. And in places where beaver are, we can leverage what they're already doing and make sure, like the obvious thing, which is just let's stop killing them first, is also happening. And so, there's a lot of work being done out there. It's like with elephants or with bison, the wallows, the different, ways that these large species move on the landscape and create diverse niches and habitats. Are we allowing them to do that? And if not, can we help mimic that? Ideally, we want them to be doing it. That's always going to be the best. They're the experts. And so, and if not them, are there other species that we can uplift who can also help with the process?
So. Yeah, beautiful. I'm remembering this like years ago. I saw, maybe I'll find it to share later with everyone, but it was a migration map of different animals moving across the Americas, the continents of the Americas, and just seeing like how creatures would move south and north, and they looked like veins moving through the body, and to see the way that they carry their bodies and they die and then they fertilize the earth, or maybe they're leaving guano, or it's just really, it's such a special lens to really be aware of the movement of creatures and their participation in the health of our earth body. And this is just relevant wherever we are. And I think that no matter where on the earth we are, there are creatures whose work we can uplift, their role to kind of restore some more balance. So well, our friend Faith Flanagan is curious if you have heard about the beaver restoration work at 42 Acres in UK Somerset, and what work may be happening over there.
Ooh, great question. I actually have not heard of that particular project. We certainly have been connected with the Beaver Trust. I don't know if that is one of their projects. They've certainly taken a lot of leadership with other organizations as well in doing work there. So, Faith, tell us more. That sounds like a fun project.
Great. I think we have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. So, Timo asks, and says, great presentation, Kate, very informative. Have any of the groups you work with used ESV to show the financial value of the services beavers provide? And then they continue, Earth Economics does some great works, but I don't think they've done beaver habitat and just ecosystem types.
So Utah, the state of Utah, and thanks in part to Utah State University and all of their beaver work, they did at one point, I don't know if it was the university itself, but certainly in Utah, there was an ecosystem benefit analysis done, ecosystem services analysis done, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And so that work definitely is out there for the state of Utah. Since then, I haven't seen anything similar per se, but yeah, I think, there are definitely folks that are trying to quantify a lot of the different services that beaver provide, and it's super helpful for getting more buy-in and getting folks to just understand, especially in terms of what we're gaining when we don't have to spend that on restoration dollars or on cleaning up our water. So there's still a lot of work to be done there, for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have one more question and then we'll wrap it up. So folks, we are at the top of the hour. If you need to go, we bless your way. But if for those of you who'd like to stick around for just another moment, our friend Bubakar asks, who for context is in Guinea, asks, I would like to know how, if we can imitate castor or beaver without castor.
That's a great question. I mean, I think it's really about knowing your waterways and what, if they have what their relationship is to the riparian vegetation and the processes, Most waterways have vegetation growing alongside them, and that vegetation falls in and becomes part of the waterway. And so I would say I think it's an important thing to explore and to see what creating in-stream structures with the vegetation that you have on hand looks like and how that impacts the different species. It's not that we want to be doing these everywhere in the system. It's like creating diversity so that there's some places where water is being slowed or moved in different directions, and so that we have more heterogeneity in our riverways. And yeah, sounds super interesting to me. I would encourage you to explore that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, folks, we are at the top of the hour. Kate, I would love to know, how can we support your work? Where would you like to direct our waters of attention, and how can we be in service to this beautiful work that you're doing with beaver?
Thank you. Yes. Well, you can follow our work online, and we have a newsletter that we put out as well, which is great if folks are interested and want to sign up for that. Getting the word out about beaver and keystone species in general is always really helpful just for our collective literacy. And for those who are feeling philanthropic, you can always support us. We have a donate button on our website as well. But really, yeah, just letting folks know about the story and that change is possible, and really letting that inspire you to make change in your own watersheds, wherever you find yourself.
Kate, thank you so much for just your generous sharing with your work that you're doing. I feel like, honestly, I only want to learn more at this point, and I may actually attend BeaverCon 2026. So thank you for sharing that. I feel really, really excited and inspired to just look around and see how, our animal kin are changing and transforming our world before our very own eyes. If you would like to join Learning Lab live in the future, you can sign up for our calendar by clicking on the link to our Luma calendar. And if you ever have any suggestions for sessions that you would like to learn about, please write community@mottearth.com, and we'll do our best to find great leaders, professionals, and teachers in the topics of your interest. So thank you again so much for joining us, and we will see you next time in the Learning Lab.